Somewhere over the Pacific right now, a 50-year-old bomber is being refueled by a flying gas station, guided by a satellite flown from a basement in Colorado. The United States Air Force owns about 5,000 aircraft and 320,000 active-duty airmen. And here's the number that explains everything. Only around 4% of them are pilots. The Air Force isn't a club of aviators. It's a machine for putting one plane over one target at one exact minute. And 96% of the machine never leaves the ground. The pattern you know by now: a civilian on top, the Secretary of the Air Force, running a department that since 2019 contains two services, the Air Force and the Space Force. The uniformed chief, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, a 4-star general at the Pentagon, with the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force speaking for the enlisted force. But the Air Force's real skeleton hangs one level down, in 9 giant commands that own everything with wings, the major commands, the MAJCOMs. Each MAJCOM is a private empire with one specialty: Air Combat Command, the Fighters and Bombers Warehouse; Air Mobility Command, the cargo jets and tankers, the Airline; Global Strike Command, the bombers and nuclear missiles; Air Education and Training Command, every new airman, every new pilot; Air Force Materiel Command, the engineers and depots, Special Operations, Reserve, plus the overseas commands, Air Forces in Europe, Pacific Air Forces. Ask an airman where they work, and they'll name a base. Ask who owns them, and it's a MAJCOM. The working city of the Air Force is the wing, usually one base, one wing, one mission, run by a colonel, a fighter wing, a bomber wing, a refueling wing, roughly 1,000 to 5,000 people. The wing is designed to be self-sufficient. It flies its own jets, fixes them, guards the fence, runs the hospital, cooks the food, and polices its own streets. When the Air Force deploys, it doesn't send divisions. It carves off a slice of a wing and mails it across the planet. Inside every wing, 4 groups: operations, the flyers; maintenance, the fixers; mission support, everyone from cops to cooks to contracting; medical, the docs. And inside the groups live the squadrons, the atom of the Air Force, 200 to 400 people, led by a lieutenant colonel. The squadron is where identity lives. Airmen don't get misty-eyed about their MAJCOM. They remember their squadron, its patch, its number, its nickname, its Friday night traditions. Ask any veteran. The Air Force is a federation of squadrons. Here is the Air Force's secret. A fighter squadron of 24 jets needs a wing of thousands to fly at all. 1 hour of F-35 flight takes many hours of maintenance. Every sortie is a relay race. Crew chiefs prep the jet at dawn. Fuels troops pump it. Weapons loaders hang the bombs. Avionics techs chase the gremlins. Air traffic controllers clear the runway. And a pilot, one person, takes it airborne. The Air Force measures its whole existence in that one unit, the sortie. Everything else is overhead for it. The people doing all of that are the enlisted force, about 80% of the service. Their job codes are AFSCs: crew chief, cyber operator, para-rescue man, security forces defender, boom operator. The culture runs on technical rank. An Air Force sergeant isn't a drill instructor stereotype. They're a specialist who happens to lead. At the top of the pyramid, Chief Master Sergeants, the top 1% of the enlisted force, capped by law. The Air Force officer flies the jet. The enlisted force owns the jet. The officer corps has tribes. Pilots, the 11 X-ray career field, historically run the service. Almost every chief of staff has worn wings. Navigators became combat systems officers. Air battle managers run the fights from radar planes. And the ground tribes, engineers, intelligence, logistics, cyber. The rated versus non-rated divide is the Air Force's quiet class system, and it's cracking slowly as drone operators and cyber officers rise. The question that decides careers: do you fly, and what do you fly? Between MAJCOMs and wings sits a thinner layer, the numbered air forces, 1st through 25th. Historic names like the 8th, the mighty 8th of the bomber war over Europe. Today, they're warfighting headquarters. When a crisis starts, a numbered air force becomes the air component of a joint command, and the deployment system feeds it. The Air Force rotates forces in packages, squadrons and slices of wings bundled into expeditionary task forces and sent forward for months at a time. The base deploys, the flag stays home. Doctrine says the Air Force does 5 things: air superiority, nobody bombs Americans from the sky. A promise kept since 1953. Global strike, hit anything, anywhere, within hours. Rapid global mobility, the cargo and tanker airline that moves the entire military. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, the eyes, and command and control, the referee's whistle that orchestrates it all. Every jet, every job code, every base traces to one of those 5 verbs. The fighter pilot is just the most photogenic 3% of the mission list. The unglamorous half wins wars. Air Mobility Command runs a scheduled airline bigger than most countries' flag carriers, C-17s and C-5s hauling tanks, KC-135s and KC-46 flying gas. Rule of thumb: fighters visit wars, tankers make wars possible. No tanker bridge, no air power. And overhead, the eyes, E-3 radar planes handing off to the new E-7, RC-135s sniffing signals, and remotely piloted aircraft flown by crews who commute to combat in Nevada and go home for dinner. It's the least cinematic air power and the most indispensable. The Air Force also mans a mission with no aircraft at all. 400 Minuteman missiles sleeping in silos under the northern plains, one leg of the nuclear triad. 2 officer crews pull 24-hour alerts in buried capsules, keys and codes at hand, running checklists written to survive the end of the world. Global Strike Command owns them, plus the bomber fleet, the B-52s, now flying with their 3rd generation of crews, waiting for the B-21. It is the quietest job in the service. Decades of alerts in which the whole point is that nothing ever happens. A third of the Air Force doesn't work full-time. The Air National Guard, state units flying frontline jets, the same F-16s and F-35s as active duty, with pilots who are airline captains on Tuesday and fighter pilots on Saturday. The Air Force Reserve, the Federal Mirror. Together, they fly a huge share of the tankers and cargo jets, and they answer to governors for hurricanes and to the president for wars. The active force calls it the total force. The Guard calls it proof you can have an Air Force without a base housing office. Why does this service exist at all? Because of a divorce. Until 1947, air power belonged to the Army. The Army Air Forces, 3 million strong in World War II, convinced that bombing could win wars on its own. The National Security Act cut them loose. An independent Air Force, born September 18, 1947, taking the planes, the bases, and the blue uniforms. The bet was doctrine, that air power is not flying artillery, it's a separate instrument of war. 80 years on, the argument continues. But the Air Force keeps the receipts. No American soldier has died to enemy air attack in over 70 years. Step back. A civilian secretary over 2 services. 9 MAJCOMs that own and train everything. Wings as self-contained cities, squadrons as the soul. And a sortie machine where 96 people on the ground stand behind every 4 in the air. It's the youngest of the original services and the most industrial. A factory whose product is a plane, on a target, on time. The motto distills the whole org chart into 5 words: fly, fight, and win. The fine print underneath is the real design. Aim high, because the machine only works if every layer does.